Hi all. Time to do Combat Shoulder Shoe 30 painting, which all we're actually going to use for this one is Agrax Earthshade to actually do some basic shading. I have to admit, uh, we get two paints in issue 30, but they don't really tell us what to do with Mechanicus Standard. As a result of that, I'm kind of, well, not lost per se, but I'm not certain, what to do with it yet because I don't have anywhere I could immediately use it on my models either. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to show you this Agrax Earthshade and good places to put it. So with it being a nice deep brown colour, it works very well over anything that is kind of bone coloured. However, I personally also think it looks good if you want to shade golds. So there are other browns that you can use to shade gold, but it depends if you want a very deep shadow on your gold or if you want to have light shadows on your gold. It depends which actual shade you use. Said I find this Earthshade quite a good one to actually create some nice deep shadows on my gold. Now, that may make the gold look too dirty to begin with, but when you go and relayer later on, what it'll do is it'll give you some nice deep gold shadows to work with. Now, these kind of things can also work well on things like wraith bones. So anywhere you've got wraith bone, in particular, if you're doing brown boots, like this guy has, it's really good for creating depth to those boots as well. Difficult model to actually get pointed at the camera to show you where I'm actually painting into there, like so. Now, can do the same anywhere that I've got like these points, anywhere that you've kind of put your Rakarth, is it Rakarth flesh it's called? Again, it looks like it's really dirtying it up, but I'm not that worried because I am going to relayer. And basically I'm just trying to pick up anywhere. Oh gosh, my camera's obsessed with zooming into my thumb today. Basically I'm hitting anywhere that I've got like leather work or anything like that. Now, over on things like Space Marines, again, you can just decide where you're putting this in. I'm going to run it over these purity seals. Now, since I've already actually covered these purity seals in black ink as well, this is going to create some very deep dark shadows. You also, can quite happily do it on these books. Again, anywhere that you've got paper or leather work. Now, if you want to, and you want to create a deeper colour on your red, it works really good with that as well. Again, I'm going to pop this on my gold too, because I personally find that it works really well at darkening the gold in a way that I personally like. Now, it also works very well on skulls, as you might guess, to create some shade on the skulls. like so. And that's all I'm really doing there. As you can see, I'm just kind of getting some, you know, some shade basically laid down on the different parts of it. Now, you do want to make sure that if you're then going to start relayering, that you've really let the inks dry, because obviously with it being an ink, if you then try and add a layer over the top of it before it's dry, you're just going to end up mixing the two colours together, which isn't ideal. I've used black on the Crux Terminus ink. However, again, if you don't want a deep black shade for your Crux Terminus, feel free to use this Agrax Earthshade. Terrible with Agrax Earthshade. For some reason, I want to pronounce it with a T. I think it's just probably because the first time I read it, my brain read a H, and it's never going to be able to remove the imaginary H that I brought into it. Okay. Now, it doesn't show it in the guides, but again, just be mindful, if you wanted to, you can get that yellow there, and you can give that a bit of depth. Again, it's my personal preference to actually do it. I'm pretty certain that they're going to use a different colour to shade these, but I like this colour against yellow cabling, particularly on cabling, because with the way that the roughs are, for want of a better word, it just makes sense to me that they are not a very black colour, but not too light either. I don't like them being too light. Okay, so that should have had a few minutes to actually get a bit of drying going on now, so that I can move on to my next little bit, which is basically we've got to do a little bit of relayering across these, just to kind of fix a couple of little areas that are imperfect. So making sure that I get the right colour here, because we've got so many colours now, haven't we? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my Rakarth Flesh, and I'm just going to thin out the paint a bit on my wet palette. And oh no, probably a bad idea to do it on that one because it's probably not dry by now. And just basically going over and relayering because this just happens to be one of the hardest places to actually get the camera to show while simultaneously trying to get the paint done right. Bit more of this. You can see I'm trying to go for more of a spotting method for painting it on rather than straight brush strokes, so I don't accidentally get anywhere that I don't want to. And thinking about where my shadows will be, for want of a better word, as I go along. Right. Okay, so managed to get down there, hopefully. Might need to do another layer. When it's dried, it does look a bit patchy. Like so. Okay, and now obviously on my Space Marines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and be very careful about where I get my paint now, because what I don't want to do is get into the shadows, so I'm just very gently kind of brushing over the top, basically using a similar motion that I might use for dry brushing. So rather than properly putting my brush on it, I'm just kind of very carefully rolling over the top of it rather than letting it fall between the recesses. And that gives me the kind of the darkness, basically the shadow remaining. Now, because I have added my darkness to the gold, I want to kind of pick it out again, just gently. For those of you who are kind of following, I do prefer, when using golds, to actually use synthetic. Well, metallics, I tend to stick to synthetic brushes. Personal preference more than anything else. Again, I'm just gonna just very gently, again, similar to what I just showed you. I'm not trying to fall into the recesses, so it's almost like just very, very, very gently brushing over the surfaces. I don't want to end up getting rid of the shadows that I've just created, basically, because that would, you know, defeat the purpose. And there we go. That's how I'm kind of using those colours. Okay. Other thing that I could possibly do with sorting out on all my Eldari is get my Corax white out, because what I've done is I've used quite a lot of the black ink last time, and it's hit things like the helmets. Now, although it's good for creating shadow, unfortunately it makes it look very dirty as well, which is definitely not how I want the helmets to come across. So again, what I'm doing is just gently brushing downwards, kind of a combination of, or like dry, not quite dry brushing, but again, highlighting, using as little as possible on the brush. So that I'm not losing the shadows I've created. But I'm getting lightness back on that helmet. So I think it's very important that it's all about learning how to get your brush into a good position, using different brushing techniques. to get the result you want, which, you know, can take a bit of practice. And, you know, no matter how much I improve myself, I always end up saying to myself, oh gosh, something doesn't look right. How did I make that mistake? Hell, I've painted entire models before now, looked at them and gone, how did I reach that standard? And then a few weeks later, I'll paint a different model and I'll look at it and I'll say to myself, well, how did I do it that terrible? Now, personally, I have a suspicion that certain models are naturally harder to paint than others and look right. But more than that, I think, obviously, combination of factors, particularly for myself, like, you know, can include whether or not my back's acting up, whether or not my hands are shaking more or less than they normally are, can all affect how good a quality I can create. That's why I fear that I'll never be a pro painter, because even if I could paint, I think if I could paint my finest every second of every day, then maybe. But unfortunately, when my hand decides to act up, I've got no hope, unfortunately. Okay. So basically, you're going to end up doing this to pretty much all your Eldari. Good time as well if you notice you've made a mistake, just to fix it. And I got that belt there, which I've added the depth to. Now, this is actually a Wraithbone colour, the belt, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to highlight. So I'm not going to repaint the whole thing, not relayering the whole thing, just trying to gently reach the highest points with a bit of Agrax white, like so. And, you know, relayer wherever you feel that things aren't perfect, where you've made mistakes, and I make lots of mistakes, so I am frequently endlessly relayering things, because that's just me, unfortunately. Right, so there we go. That is, for want of a better word, how to use the Agrax Earthshade, with a bit of relayering done afterwards, just to show you how you in particular relayer things like your, you know, your purity seals, the thing. You may want to not go as dark as I've done in the recesses, but I personally really love deep recesses on paperwork. It's just the way I am. I love it. It's my personal thing, for want of a better word. So hopefully you've liked that. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you when we start hitting the Chaos Space Marines.